Welcome back to the Health Revival Show. We're going to go back to some old school podcasts.
Yeah, we've done some, I don't know if we might have done an entire podcast on MTHFR.
It's called Unraveling Methylation.
There we go. Well, we're going to go back to it because I think that a lot of times people, I don't know about you, I get a lot of messages from people that are like, I have the MTHFR mutation.
And they think that it's one gene.
Yes. And it's like, okay. And then what? What else is it? Like, there's such a bigger picture to MTHFR.
Yeah.
So we want to talk about, obviously, MTHFR, the gene expression that can be affected by it, but why it's not the entire picture and signs of methylation issues and how to support methylation naturally.
What is methylation?
Yeah, because I think methylation is this like very large topic that encompasses so many things, and it can be really confusing.
And I think the big thing right now in the press or the media, whatever social media, like the buzzwords of MTHFR, is that you are seeing everybody talk about methylfolate and methylated B vitamins. And there's other cofactors that matter. I did a reel on this not too long ago. Somebody was asking me, like, I'm taking B12, yet my homocysteine is still really high. And I'm like, well, you need to think about NAC or glutathione. You need to think about trimethylglycine, choline, other B vitamins, not just B12, and honestly, not just folate. And so I'm excited to dive into this today. Just as a reminder, we are like 5 weeks out from our live event in Chicago. So at the time this airs, I'm hoping we'll have less than like 10 tickets available because we are capping it. So we actually toured the venue this past weekend. What is today? Tuesday? Last Friday, we toured it. If you guys follow us on social media, you probably saw us give a little bit of sneak peek behind the scenes, and the space is really cute, really excited, but we want to keep it intimate and comfortable. And so we actually took away 15 tickets because we want to make sure that everybody is there and has their time, FaceTime with all of us, and then also is comfortable, and we're not cramming people in like sardines. So as we're talking about this, links are in the show notes. You can grab your ticket, whether that is a VIP ticket or general admission. And then also we have the hotel block there. It's about $105 a night. You can get 2 double beds or 1.
If you wake up feeling puffy in the morning, your ankles or wrists feel swollen, your rings feel really tight, or that awful puffy face feeling, typically it's a sign that you need electrolytes. And a lot of people actually even get bloated from drinking water because that's not proper hydration. Electrolytes are needed to actually pull the water into the cells in the body. And believe it or not, when you get more hydrated, you look thinner, you look leaner, because water isn't extracellular making you all puffy, it's intracellular hydrating you. And that's why we love Buoy. I squirt it in my water all day long because it's simple, it's effective, and it doesn't have all of the junk that a lot of the powders have. So this is my choice.
Queen size, I don't know, king size, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that, and then we have a shuttle that's going to shuttle to and from to make it more convenient since it's a little bit farther away. But we also have right around there the cutest little downtown area. I was really impressed, but I'm also the girl who loves small town feel, like boutique downtown area where I can go and kind of see the different shops. So that is all right around the venue. It's right next to the train station as well. I'm really excited. And so we'll also pause here and give a shout out and thank you to our sponsors, some of our sponsors, which our goodie bags, I was thinking about it this morning, are probably going to be close to the ticket price in value because there's so much that we're getting. So we have Buoy minerals, we have LMNT electrolytes, we have Vital Medical, New Ethics. They are sending us some different supplements. Metagenics is giving us 2 full-size bottles per bag, and we got to pick those from the Her Wellness line. Really excited about that. We also have some samples coming from Research Nutritionals. We've got our own FitMom stuff that we're going to be putting in there. And then we've got a hydration bar that we're going to be doing every morning with different matchas and all kinds of stuff. So, I mean, heck, the goodie bag alone is going to be worth the ticket price, but we should charge more.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We already...
We've realized like we are not doing this event to make money by any means. This is an event to help build community. This is an event to get people together. This is an event to, just have people learn more about how to support themselves in that midlife transition period when things just seem to go crazy. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. And it's, there's so much information. It's becoming such a saturated area on social media that it's so overwhelming. And so we're hoping to bring a lot of different realms of how to support yourself in that time of life to the event in a 2-day packed in. You're going to leave it just like, oh my gosh, mind is blown. So motivated. That's how I always leave events.
Community, met new friends.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Meeting a lot of our clients are going. So I think there's that aspect of community. And then a lot of, clients are bringing their friends or their family. Yeah, it'll be really, really, really cool. I'm very excited. So let's dive into today. So we're going to start off with MTHFR in terms of like, what is it? Okay. So MTHFR is methyl N tetrahydrofolate reductase. Okay. Huge mouthful, but it's an enzyme involved in converting folate to the usable form of methylfolate. So it obviously has this role in methylation and detox pathways. So folate, especially in its active form, which if you'll see sometimes on supplements, it says like 5-MTHF, it provides methyl groups. So methyl groups are kind of like these little chemical tags that your body uses to turn on and off functions. So think of it like a little Post-it note that your body goes around and it puts on molecules to tell them to do or to not do things. And without enough folate, your body doesn't have enough tags and it cannot methylate properly. So specifically for detoxification, folate, Liz talked earlier about homocysteine. Folate helps convert homocysteine, which is a potentially toxic byproduct. It can be a toxic product in the body when it gets too high, which it will, and it can turn into methionine, which then supports, in the proper process, will support glutathione production. So when you don't have enough folate or you don't have enough of these these cofactors to help break down homocysteine, it turns into a toxic byproduct. But if you do support folate, if you do support that methylation process, if you genetically have that, then you get this beautiful antioxidant of glutathione, which is kind of like a master antioxidant in the body, a master detoxifier. So without enough folate, one example, homocysteine can build up, create more inflammation specifically cardiovascularly. And then there's oxidative stress, cardiovascular risk with it. And usually you see the two big MTHFR genes that a lot of people see when they see like, I have an MTHFR mutation. Mm-hmm. There's C677T, which is kind of the big hitter. And then there's A1298C. That's a lesser version of the C677T. They do very similar things. They're very similar in terms of their gene function, but they're basically different, right? So some people might have an MTHFR mutation, but it's not the big C677T one. It's the smaller one, right? And we test this on our genetics test, the Pro7, the Fagron that we run. And I love it because it puts all the methylation genes and then the homocysteine metabolism genes, which are very closely related to methylation, together on the pages. Yeah. So you can kind of see, okay, if I have this MTHFR mutation, do I also have a lot of other ones that are like the transport gene for methylation or the gene that helps get methylfolate into cells, right? Those matter just as much as the MTHFR one. So a lot of people will test for that in blood, but like to me, okay, yeah, you can take some more folate and methylfolate, but like,
is it really the
problem?
Yeah. And I think too, so when we are looking at this, the big thing is avoid folic acid, right? Because that is the synthetic form of folate and your body cannot convert it if you have these blocks. But for example, if you're looking at somebody who wants to get pregnant from a fertility perspective, I mean, anybody with a transport gene and some of the other genes that really look at how your body is going to utilize folate, that's really important because the reason why they say to take folic acid is to prevent birth defects. Okay, but if you're taking the wrong support here to prevent the birth defects, you actually can put yourself at a higher risk because things are backing up in the system. And then I also would say that there are other cofactors like we already mentioned. And if somebody is more anxious or more prone to anxiety, or we know they have anxiety, we are not going to use certain like methylated B vitamins. We're going to maybe switch over to a hydroxyl or dinosylcobalamin so that we can support not making them more anxious, right? Or more, we call them excitatory, right? And so I think that's a really big piece. When we look at this, it's not just the C677T or the 1298C, it is everything else that is involved in this pathway. And one thing to know about genetics too is that it's still evolving, right? There are many other genes that we don't even know yet, or maybe don't have test for on these particular panels that we run in terms of the 3x4 or the Pro7 that impact this. But what we can see on the catabolization and the remethylation and the more homocysteine metabolism side is, do you maybe respond better to a trimethylglycine? And I have seen this in practice. It's not just B complexes. So yes, folate is very important, but depending upon the person, if they don't have all of these other cofactors to absorb things, to transport things, then you want to put in other things like trimethylglycine, choline, NAC. The list can, kind of go on there. And then again, when you're looking at that homocysteine marker in blood work, we like to see it. I personally like to see it between 4 and 7. I know that there are some functional providers that will say up to a 9. In the research, when this homocysteine is elevating in the body, it's very inflammatory to the blood-brain barrier and can be very neurotoxic. So it's associated with things like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, ALS, short-term memory loss, brain fog, those types of things. And so this really, when we think about methylation in general, why it matters a lot for detoxification, as well as detoxification of hormones and chemicals that we are exposed to every day that are also like endocrine disruptors. So when we think of this hormonal regulation, especially of estrogen, we want to make sure that we're able to clear estrogen out accordingly. So think of a sink and a drain analogy or a bathtub analogy, right? Like your drain is clogged and you have a bathtub full with the faucet on. What do you need to do? You need to unclog the drain. Yes, you also need to turn down the faucet of toxins and all these things coming in that are filling your bathtub up. But just turning that off isn't going to help. You have to actually unclog the drain and be able to eliminate and methylate properly. So we look at like the Dutch test or the hormone zoomer, and we can see that estrogen methylation. Is it turned up or is it turned down? We also see that heavily associated with estrogenic, issues. So we think fibroids, heavy periods, PMS, mood swings. I would also say histamine reactions here too. So we talk about like menstrual rhinitis. Is that person getting more itchy, sneezy, watery eyes, clearing their throat, just feeling like they have these allergies around their period or even ovulation? Or when we see somebody going through menopause, and we were just talking on our walk about this, so many people don't realize how much poor estrogen detoxification can impact them in menopause and start to really build up in terms of our mast cells, our histamine, cytokines, other things. And then all of a sudden they're bloating with everything they eat. So they have a lot of these food sensitivities or reactivities. Now they're getting itchy, sneezy, rashes, hiving, eczema, rosacea, like all these skin issues they never had before. And at the end of the day, that shit will come out your skin. It's building up in the body. So we really have to open up these drains and keep the detoxification systems moving, I would say fluidly, right? If we think about that bathtub analogy, so that you're able to keep that same, rate out as rate in.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have this methylation impairment, right, what might it impact? What might it look like? One, detoxification. We've already kind of beat this pretty deep in already. If you're low in folate, the body doesn't have enough of these methyl tags to basically tell the body to break down and clear things. So one of the big processes of methylation is the body will take, for example, histamine. Histamine is a big thing that methylation deals with. So it'll tag histamine and say, hey, degrade histamine, break it down, get it out through the detoxification process, right? Out the liver, through, either the colon, sweat it out, you pee it out. And so when you don't have enough of those methyl tags, histamine can build up. A lot of times histamine tolerance issues could be a big methylation issue. Sometimes you'll see hormone issues because hormones are another thing that the body has to tag to break down and detoxify, specifically estrogen. Okay, so this is where a lot of times we'll see things like periods are really heavy. You have PMS, you have fibroids. The other big thing is mental health. So serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, folate is essential for not only creating neurotransmitters, but also for basically tagging them, degrading them, breaking them down, and clearing them. Because again, you need to have a proper creation and clearance cycle if you don't, things will start to build up, right? And so this is where you will get big high highs and big low lows of anxiety, depression, and mood dysfunction, right? So a lot of times, I don't know how much better we can explain it, how many different ways we can explain it, but like mood disorders are not a neurotransmitter or a chemical problem. It's typically a detoxification problem. It's typically an inflammatory problem, and it's an environmental problem. And so mood disorders, I truly believe yes, they can be genetic, but they are genetic because of things like this, not because like your body isn't creating the right chemicals or your body isn't, it's not that type of dysfunction. So it's not an SSRI depletion. It's not a, anti-anxiety med deficiency. Like it is much bigger than that in terms of the processes of the body. And so even things like panic attacks, brain fog, insomnia, all of those things can be impacted because if that enzyme of, the methylfolate works slower because of mutation, you have poor neurotransmitter balance. It leads to imbalance of too highs or too lows, right? All because you are not either making enough of them or you cannot clear them well enough. So that causes that backup and imbalance. And then DNA expression. So when your body adds a methyl group, which is 1 carbon, 3 hydrogens, to a section of your DNA, it's a signal that says, turn this gene off or silence it, right? So this process is called DNA methylation, and it helps control which genes are active and which genes are not without changing the DNA code itself. So this is what epigenetics is. This is the ability to influence your genes in a positive or negative manner. And your DNA holds thousands of genes, but you don't want all of them active all the time. That would be chaos in the body, right? So methylation helps to regulate a few really important things in the body. One is cellular growth and repair, basically how you age.
All right, if you're dealing with water retention, you're waking up puffy, your ankles or your wrists are really swollen, or you can't get your rings off, and maybe you're even dragging throughout the day, no matter how much water you drink, there's actually a good chance that you're not actually hydrating properly.
Exactly, because water alone is not enough. You need electrolytes, you need sodium, potassium, magnesium, because those things actually pull water into your cells. Otherwise, you're basically just flushing it out and wondering why you're still tired, you're still bloated, and you're still sluggish.
But here's the thing, most electrolyte supplements out there aren't helping you in any way because a lot of them contain things like natural flavors, food dyes, and maltodextrin, which can irritate your gut. And these things can also spike your blood sugar when you're trying to heal.
That's why we both started using Buoy. It's super simple, just trace minerals and electrolytes in liquid form. No flavors, no colors, no sugar, no sweeteners, and you squeeze it into whatever you are drinking. Water, coffee, tea, smoothies, you name it.
And it's clinically backed by science too. So studies have shown that Buoy helps you hydrate better, 64% better in fact, and that's data coming from key blood and urinary markers, not just marketing fluff. And honestly, you can feel the difference. I've had many clients tell me their digestion's improved, they have less headaches, and they're better energy throughout the day.
And Buoy isn't just for people that go to the gym all the time and sweat a bunch. They actually offer a 35% lifetime discount for anyone that's struggling with chronic illnesses. Things like POTS, Hashimoto's, Crohn's disease, chronic migraines, and every autoimmune condition. They're really committed to making better hydration accessible to people who need it most.
I actually throw it in my coffee every morning because it's such an easy upgrade. You don't even taste it, but you're definitely gonna notice if you miss it.
If you're tired of playing hydration roulette and want something that actually supports your body, you've got to try Buoy. It's honestly one of the simplest ways to feel better faster. One is immune responses, cancer prevention, inflammation control, which goes hand in hand with immune responses. I feel like the stress that your immune system and inflammatory system are basically the same thing. They are one and the same pathways, same turns ons and offs, like very similar. Aging and longevity and detoxification are like big ones in DNA expression that methylation impacts. So too much methylation of certain genes can silence protective genes like tumor suppressors, right? And too little methylation can lead to overactive or unstable genes like inflammatory or cancer promoting genes. And this is why methylation is largely connected to a lot of different types of cancers because of its ability to influence positively and negatively cancer genes.
Yeah, and I think too, you have to think about the impact that it has on the liver, right? So if your body is not able to add these methyl groups, your liver is trying to step in and like God designed us with multiple detoxification systems and pathways in the body, right? If you were to like look at the Fagron report, like all the different steps of this and the backup systems that we have, like it is not just if you have this, you're doomed. Like I just did a reaction reel with the guy from 10X, blanking on his name at this moment in time, but he was just talking about how every single person that he knows with MTHFR has anxiety or gut issues or whatever. And I was like, This is not, you can't say that, right? Because some individuals do have anxiety with gut issues, but is it coming from the MTHFR mutation alone? That's ignorant to kind of say, in my opinion, because we think about, for example, parasites. Parasites are known to cause crazy amounts of anxiety for some people. You clear them out, things restabilize. We also think about cortisol. We think about, so many other factors besides just saying MTHFR is the reason. So just want to put that out there. Like if you have the MTHFR, Most people do. Okay. I have it. This is also what I would say, again, going back to the fertility, pregnancy, postpartum conversation. I can't scream it from the rooftop loud enough that you want to support this throughout pregnancy with folate, but also with choline. And there's so much research around this. I've shared multiple reels about it, but when you are going through postpartum, especially, you're a lot more likely to get postpartum depression if you are taking folic acid, because that builds up in the body since your body cannot convert it. And conventional medicine, again, got this wrong. That's one factor. On top of the factor that you just went through 10 months of your body changing in ways that you can't control, you have an infant that is, robbing you of your sleep and all kinds of chaos and just it's a big life change when you have a baby and then you layer that in on top of it. It's not helpful. So I wish that conventional medicine could get this right in terms of folate and not folic acid, but also throughout pregnancy, supporting with about 900 milligrams of choline. Very, very important for fetal development. Let's talk about other things that methylation is important for. And one of those is energy production in the body, supporting our mitochondrial function and producing ATP. So we know that that's our body's kind of energy currency, if you will. And so your body needs various cofactors in order to be able to produce this energy. Carnitine, creatine, choline, as I've mentioned several times here, CoQ10. The beautiful thing about the genetics report when we look at that is it also tells us, are you more prone to be deficient and need more things like CoQ10 or phosphatidylcholine, right? All of those methylation groups require these things for their production. If methylation is sluggish, your body can't make enough of them, you're going to find that your energy production suffers. You feel, tired. You can't think clearly. It's like slow to find words. You have this kind of just whole body fatigue, even when you are sleeping well throughout the night. And the other thing that I'll add about choline too, especially in menopause, it's very neuroprotective. It can help with brain fog, but it's also helping fight non-alcoholic fatty liver. So again, when we don't have proper methylation, that builds up reactive oxidative stress, ROS. We think about inflammation in the body that produces inflammation in the liver. We start to store these fatty depositions and we end up with non-alcoholic fatty liver. Choline is one support amongst many other things that you can do if you are in menopause to support that. Then we also think about how this feeds into the Krebs cycle. So that's more of a series of reactions inside the mitochondria to generate this ATP, right? It's the powerhouse inside. Think of it, it's like your power plant. If the lights are shut off, we're not producing any energy, right? And so without this proper methylation, all those raw materials and enzymatic functions that are required for those systems to run smoothly, to get those lights on, don't function as well. And so again, you're left with fatigue and less energy. Mitochondria, I think more and more what we're going to find and see and hear more about is that is one of the biggest root causes for people, is that their mitochondria are not functioning well. And a lot of this, I think, goes back to the toxic soup that we live in and not being able to detoxify things. Because if your cells get into this place where they don't feel safe releasing toxins and things that are inside the cell, because the immune system says, no, this is going to make me sick, then we can't get nutrients in, we can't get nutrients out. We can't get hormones in, we can't get hormones out. We can't get those toxins out and to get rid of them. And so going back to something like a simple daily support with NAC, which is a precursor to glutathione, I feel pretty confident that most people could benefit from that. I'm a little bit cautious on the glutathione front just by itself, because for some really chronic illness cases, it can make things worse because you can start to push detoxification way too hard. So I usually start with NAC, and then I'll also maybe put in like a liposomal or a capsule form of glutathione before I go to injectable, because injectable is going to be the most powerful. It's going to have the longest half-life. But I don't want to make somebody feel bad with an injection of glutathione and then it's not going to get out of their body for 3 or 5 days, right? If we do this low and slow, let's always say the name of the game, low and slow. But glutathione is very protective. It protects your mitochondria from this oxidative stress. It helps with that cell permeability and the functioning and the communication that can otherwise be damaged over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so MTHFR, as we've kind of discussed already, is not the biggest picture. Like it's a snapshot, right? It's one piece of a much bigger puzzle. And the thing to understand about genes is that genes all basically have a job. They all have an individual job and then they work together as a team, right? So if you think about a football team, right? Okay, Your quarterback's a little injured. Yes, that's a huge deal, but how's your running back? How are your wide receivers? Like, how is the rest of the team? Are they healthy? Are they doing the right things? That's a much bigger picture that you need to be looking at. And when you only look at MTHFR, you just don't get the broadest picture of what the situation internally is like or predispositions might be there. And so some big ones that we want to touch on really fast, because over 20 plus genes are involved in methylation. Like there's a lot of genes and big ones too. So like COMT. COMT is a huge gene that's involved in methylation. It uses methyl groups to break down and clear out estrogens in particular, neurotransmitters also, stress hormones, environmental toxins, and drugs. So COMT needs methylation, but methylation also needs COMT. So like if you have the layering of both of them, I have that. It's wonderful. You can also have variations of COMT that are too fast and too slow. And so too fast can clear out things too quickly, which can lead to low dopamine. And for a lot of people, they experience that as like ADHD. So when we look at genetics, you want to see, is this person experiencing more of a fast COMT or a slow COMT mutation? A slow COMT can lead to high dopamine, high estrogen, more stress sensitivity. These people typically are the ones that don't tolerate methylated supplements very well. Like they feel anxious or they feel more wired when they take methylated B vitamins. And they often also struggle with things like caffeine or detoxification. They're very sensitive individuals, right? So that's typically a sign that you have more of a slow COMT, whereas the opposite, like I said, the fast COMT can lead to that too low, right? The low motivation, low focus. They're the ones that feel like they need Adderall or they need those medications to kind of help bring their, brain up to snuff, when in reality, it's typically more of this mutation that's going on and some other factors. And then we talked a little bit about homocysteine. So there's the genes CBS, MTR, MTRR, and BHMT. They all play a bigger role in that methylation and homocysteine cycle. So they affect how B12 is created and used, which is the other half of methylation support. Methylation kind of relies a lot on methylfolate and then B12. Those are like the big two nutrients that it relies on. It relies on some other things, but they affect the backup system to our methylation. So your methylation system has a little bit of this like backup reserve in the body, and that's specifically in the kidneys and the liver. And so that uses what we talked about, trimethylglycine, right? And that can also use choline, and it can help take the pressure off of the MTHFR, right? So depending on how mutated, how genetically predisposed someone is to these things, you might want to include a couple layers of support to help depending on what symptoms they're dealing with at that time, right? So always know, though, epigenetics are greater than genetics. Like your lifestyle, your diet, your environment, how you support your system matters more than the gene itself. And you can have MTHFR mutations and still have great methylation. Like just because you have that does not mean that you're SOL and up a creek, right? Like you can absolutely still have good methylation, but here's some signs that we want to give you that typically indicate methylation issues. So like there's a lot, because methylation is basically the on and off switch in the body. So it affects almost everything.
Well, it also, I don't know, we haven't covered this yet, but it impacts how you handle stress, like your ability to get out of this fight or flight state. And then, again, this is going to come down to some other genes in terms of neurotransmitters, MAOA, MAOB, COMT, those types of things. But I see this a lot with people who, for example, let's say somebody triggers you and you get upset. You can't let it go. You can't calm down. That heart racing, that kind of like anger, that frustration. It's like, I always love the 5x5 rule. If it's not going to matter in 5 years from now, don't give it more than 5 minutes. Some situations, they upset you more and you're just like, God, I got to talk about this with somebody. But like from a nervous system perspective, like feeling that in your body, it becomes this anxiety because you're so tense. So I think that again is another big thing to address here is, how are you resilient to stress, and how are you able to get your nervous system signaled, hey, we're okay, we're safe. Like we don't need to stay in this fight or flight, escape, freeze kind of state. So that's a really big one. And again, that can show up as anxiety or depressions, because on the other side of this, if you have like low mood, things aren't going well, and it's like, woe is me, and you start to get this feeling of just like depression, you're sad, you're realizing that like nothing makes you happy, and you're trying to, work through it. You're trying to see things as a glass half full, but you just can't. Like you just get stuck there. That would be one pretty big indication that, again, more than just methylation, but you might need some of these cofactors to help you. And there's a lot of things that we look at in terms of, some of those neurotransmitter genes and what could help. We'll always give a resource of Dirty Genes. Love that book by Dr. Ben Lynch. Adore him. He's fantastic. So if you don't know what we're talking about here, read that book. But other big ones I've already mentioned several times: fatigue, brain fog, right? Feeling like you just can't think of words. Why did I walk into this room? You're trying to tell a story and you forgot halfway through what you were, the point was. Hormone imbalances again. So a lot of PMS issues, estrogen dominance relative to, progesterone, or estrogen dominance in terms of, PCOS, endometriosis, those types of things. Because at the end of the day, you could not have any of the PCOS patterns or endometrial issues, but you could be relatively estrogen dominant because your liver and your methylation and detoxification pathways are burdened. And I talk about this all the time in terms of constipation, right? Like, that shit's not coming out because you're not pooping it out. So we think about that. And then this is going to present in other ways too, especially with histamine. So over time, histamine builds up in the body. You don't have enough DAO enzyme or other factors like quercetin, vitamin C, stinging nettles. Like, there's a variety of things that can help break down histamine. And then that shows up in the forms of allergy, asthma, skin issues, rashing, hiving, sneezing, all those types of things, whole body itching, okay? Mast cells responding to foods that you used to be able to tolerate. So DAO is really important, especially in the gut. And you can take this kidney porcine extract in the form of a supplement to help with that. Or you can also take histamine methyltransferase. And this works mostly inside the cells. So again, brain, liver, skin, calming those things down. And then other things that we would say here, signs and symptoms, is that you are nauseous when you're like in the car or plane or traveling. You can't tolerate alcohol. You're very sensitive to smells. You essentially react to everything. Like, you try a supplement and you're reacting. So your bucket really of your toxins is just spilling over, right? And you really have a low tolerance or an intolerance to these things. And this is where, when we talk about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 detoxification, we're always starting at phase 3, because you will never fix the upstream issues if your drain is clogged. Okay. So how do we do this? We talked a lot about, different cofactors throughout this podcast, those methylated B vitamins, methylfolate, methylcobalamin. Again, not everybody tolerates that. So I'll give you a couple supplements off the top of my mind that I really like. Becca can weigh in as well. I like Methyl Ease from New Ethics. One of our mentors formulated this. He did a really great job because he put trimethylglycine in there. I believe there's some choline, but he also put intrinsic factor. And intrinsic factor is what helps us with B12 and absorption in the gut. And I think that's key. It's also not overtly high B12. And that is one thing that you will see with some products. It is really high dose B12. And one end of the spectrum, this is a water-soluble vitamin, so you're going to pee it out. That's why anytime you take B vitamins, your pee looks really bright yellow or whatnot. But on the other end of the spectrum, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. And maybe I'm missing all those other cofactors. I also like the Pure Genomic B12 melts. And so that's got your hydroxycobalamin and adenosylcobalamin in there instead of the methylated B vitamins. I personally, as a practitioner, I've moved more away from so much methylated B vitamins to some of these other ones that have cofactors, because I see it in blood work a lot better. Sometimes I have to add a gram of trimethylglycine, and that has been the golden ticket to get some of these stubborn homocysteine levels down, especially for people with autoimmune. You're also thinking about other cofactors. So I already mentioned several, but let's also bring in things like zinc. Right? Zinc is required to help with absorption and build stomach acid and absorption of various B vitamins. B2, B6, magnesium. Magnesium is a miracle mineral. It's going to show up in every thing. So making sure that you get good quality magnesium. I personally take Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. 2 capsules a day gives me 500 milligrams. For a long time, I took Prosorb. I still like it, but honestly, I anymore don't want to deal with powder. So if it's a capsule, I can pop it, I can take it, great. But Prosorb Plus is also a really good one. It's got magnesium and vitamin C, could be well, tolerated for people with histamine issues. And then I think from a day-to-day perspective, you need to get folic acid out of your diet. So that's going to be anything enriched or fortified. You're going to look for things, in the grocery store on the ingredient list, folic acid, dump it back. You don't need it. Support your liver, support the hell out of your liver. Like citrus, we think about bitters, right? So you see a lot of times I'm sharing my camu in the morning with lemon, water, maybe some apple cider vinegar you could throw in there. You want to think about things like arugula, dandelion root, Jerusalem artichoke, dandelion teas, beets. Those are really great. Actual eating organ liver to support your liver. And then reduce the crap, right? So carbonated beverages that are really sugary. We think about ultra, processed foods, refined sugars, alcohol, and anything else that is processed and shelf stable for months on end. We really want to try to minimize those things. And guys, it's not even just the, let's say you go to like a bakery. That's a little bit different when somebody's making something fresh. It is all of this stuff. And by the way, folic acid came to use in the United States because it extends shelf life. So there's a reel that I just redid, and it shows the brioche buns, which are so good, by a brand, and how the guy went on vacation, came home, and they were not moldy. But the bread that he got from, the fresh bakery was full of mold. That is why when they say enriched and fortified, these things extend the shelf life, they make more money. See, it's all profitability, but at the cost of your health. So buy fresh as much as you possibly can. I'm not saying never have a baked good or a treat or whatever, but remember that even in a lot of the flours that they use to make these things that are fresh baked, it's going to be enriched and fortified. So that's just kind of my spiel there. I think you can get very far, especially with your children, trying to minimize all of these things for them, because it's mostly going to be found in cereals and cereal bars and those types of things, and really thinking about other ways that you can support. So for me, I'll just give a little bit tidbit here. A lot of the kids that I've worked with and my own kids, I keep them on some of the BioRay supports, but I also keep him on, and he loves it, Metagenics. It's just a multivitamin that's a grape Starburst flavor kind of gummy. That's got some really good folate in there. And then I also keep them on their DHA, which tastes like bubble gum. And so I know that's helping calm down inflammation in the body. I know some of those herbs I'm giving are supporting his immune system. It's not direct B vitamins, but I did do, when he was younger, some different choline gummies because I understand I have the MTHFR, and I understand he's a kid and he's going to have some of these exposures. But truly, when it comes to nutrition, you want to get folic acid entirely out of your diet, and you want to support your liver.
Yeah. And I mean, there's not a whole lot I'd add to that. The only thing that I find really interesting and helpful that is a very lesser known support is the trimethylglycine. And that's something that we've seen pretty impactful in a lot of stuff, because trimethylglycine helps detoxify histamine. I'm really struggling at talking today. It helps detoxify histamine. So it's something that you could consider putting in place. It's pretty cheap to utilize. Mm-hmm. You can dose it a little bit higher. You typically want to put it in a little bit earlier on in the day for most people, because it can, for some people, cause a little bit of restlessness or insomnia, depending on the case. If you are someone that is more of an over-methylator, it's something to be careful with. And that's something that you got to, figure out on your own, work with someone to identify, because it can be stimulating. And can cause restlessness if taken too close to bedtime, which is, again, why we usually want to put it in, morning time to start and see how someone tolerates it. But yeah, it's going to help with sleep, especially for a lot of people that struggle with sleep, because better methylation also turns into better conversion of serotonin to melatonin in the pineal gland. So it'll help with like circadian rhythm. And a lot of times people's insomnia or night issues are histamine issues. Because histamine can cause a lot of like racing thoughts, insomnia, post-menopause drip, and especially post-menopause drip. Good God, post-nasal drip in perimenopause, menopause. Oh, I need a reset after this. I need a deep breathing exercise. Because when estrogen goes on kind of this roller coaster, and a lot of women do not detoxify it very well during that time because it's just overloaded. And then they get this buildup, which stimulates histamine further. So that's why, in my opinion, I think that is a big key for a lot of women in that time of life, and why their sleep starts to go to shit. Yes, progesterone can also be at play, but I think a lot of women have low progesterone before perimenopause. And I think in perimenopause, other things start to happen that creates bigger issues. So another conversation for another day. Probably pretty soon, because we have another podcast coming out about that soon.
I forgot to tell you earlier. We're doing progestin versus progesterone, because I am really tired of the conversation. Your birth control is not progesterone.
Oh, I just had a conversation today with someone on social media, and she said, I'm so confused because my doctor that does my mammograms told me that progesterone is putting you at a higher risk for cancer, but not estrogen by itself. And I was like, with all due respect, she does not know what she's talking about. So,
with all due respect. That's very kind of you to say, because what did I say on our call the other day? I was like, I just blatantly tell people, like, you fire your doctor. Like, this is just, I had so many situations recently, but one that really just aggravates me to no end. A nurse practitioner told one of my clients that natural desiccated thyroid is synthetic. And I'm like, okay, in one hand, yes, we understand that it's created in a laboratory, but it's made from bovine pig glandular with T1, T2, T3, T4. And you're just telling her that her Synthroid, which by the way, we know is the worst thyroid medication out there, is better. And you're just denying her right to healthcare and asking we wrote this very nice letter. She's going to go see her endocrinologist later this month. We've brought her antibodies down, cut them by half. She's doing amazing. But I truly believe part of her issue is that we are not going to get this regulated until we can get off Synthroid into something else. And everybody's body does better with certain things, but so often we see people on T4 only medication that shuts down your natural production. And we'll do this whole podcast, but to end this rant, it's kind of like birth control. It shuts down your natural production of your hormones. So why would you have your TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone? It's your pituitary stimulating the thyroid saying, I need this. That's going to get shut down and suppressed. Just like birth control shuts down your natural production of hormones. Why people go on it, because they have all these crazy PMS issues and all seamlessly they go away because we've just put a Band-Aid on with synthetic hormones that are keeping things more even keel. And then you wonder why we never get to addressing the root cause, fix the issues, or you get off birth control, or you do something different for your thyroid and things just implode. So with all due respect, maybe we should just think for our, selves a little bit further and do a little bit more research and go back to that OBGYN with the research, because clearly she's got it kind of got backwards, I think.
Yeah. And she's the one giving, and this person also had a full hysterectomy.
Oh, fantastic.
And I was like, they should have put you on hormones immediately after you had that. And she goes, I'm on an estradiol patch with no progesterone. So the number of things that are wrong in this situation, I cannot begin to count. But you believe what you want to believe. The big thing I come from is gather information and make sure you gather more than just what your doctor is telling you. Because in our experience, unfortunately, it's not always stuff you can trust.